Good morning. In this video, I'm going to read Vladimir Nabokov's text, Good Readers and Good Writers. I'm recording it so that my students may benefit from this reading I'm doing at home. I'm preparing for my class and I'm recording my preparation. So let's read. Vladimir Nabokov's Good Readers and Good Writers. So this text is about readers and writers. And Nabokov's adds the title good in both nouns, adjectives, good readers. So as I read good readers, I want to ask, who are the bad readers? Who is an average reader? Who is a poor reader? What kind of readers are there? What makes a reader a good reader? I want to be a good reader. And I guess, my dear students, you also want to be good readers, don't you? But what makes good readers? Just desiring to be good readers doesn't make you good readers. We have to do. Now, good writers, what I wonder is, how come Novakov places both uh, nouns in same title, readers, writers? Is there a connection between reading and writing? Definitely. Why not? Why didn't Novakov write good writers and readers? Why did he first place readers and then he placed writers? Is there a reason? I guess so. Because reading is a receptive skill. Reading is a preparation for writing. Look what I'm doing right now. I'm reading. If I continue reading like this for an hour, I'll be able to write something. So as I'm reading Nabokov's essay, I will learn about how to read, probably. So reading comes first and writing comes second. One has to read to become a writer, right? If you don't receive, you can't produce. Writing is productive skill. So you want to understand from the title. Look what I'm doing. I'm paying attention, very close attention to each and every word in the text. I'm taking time with the language and ideas in the text. This is what David Rothenberg means when in paragraph 12 of his essay, How the Web Destroys the Quality of Students' Writing, he explains what a teacher should do in class so that his students become good researchers. And Rothenberg says that a teacher should encourage thinking in class. A teacher should make students pay attention, close attention to the language and ideas of what they're reading. What I did, I spent 2 to 3 minutes on the title. I talked about the adjectives of the noun. I talked about the order, first reading, then writing. I discussed why it's like that. Can you write it like good writers and good readers? Probably you can. If you have good writers, they will get good readers. I don't know if you agree, but that's a difficult thing to talk about. Okay, let's get into the text. How to be a good reader or kindness to authors, something of that sort might serve to provide a subtitle for these various discussions of various authors for my plan to deal. Now, you read about rhetorical analysis in second semester. When you talk about rhetorical situation, you consider things like the rhetor, who is the rhetor, who is the speaker, who is the writer, who is making the argument. Then you consider who is the audience, who is the reader, who is the viewer, who is the listener. Then you consider what is the message, the speaker, the hearer. What is the message? What is the discourse? What is the code? Then you consider what is the medium on which this message being through which this message being conveyed. What are the assumptions of the writer? What are the assumptions of the writer about the reader? What is the context? What is the time in which a writer is speaking? If you Let me just quickly show you from this book I'm holding in my hand, the book you read in second semester, that is Rhetorical Analysis. If you go to, I'll show you a small diagram, for example, and recall you read this in second semester. Look, Kairos. You read about Kairos in second semester. Here is a diagram that discusses rhetorical situation. For example, you have the speaker, Novakov. You have the occasion. Now we'll discuss the occasion. You have presuppositions the speaker has about the topic and the audience. You have the audience, as third semester students, Divakar sir, and you have this speech, this text. Now, as you are reading for your summary response, you should also apply such things. So, look, let me read. How to be a good reader or kindness to readers, something of that sort might serve to provide a subtitle for these, let me highlight, these various discussions of various authors. Let me highlight. Now I get a hint here. Most probably, this text is an introduction to an extended piece of writing. How do I know? Because I now know the occasion. Novakov talks about these various discussions. Here we have only one discussion. He says these various discussions of various authors. I wish I knew the anthology or the book Nabokov wrote where this text is given. I want to read that. He's a wonderful critic, right? So see, now I know the occasion now. I know the occasion. Nabokov is probably discussing various writers. And this text is part of that longer discussion. Now I know the context. Let me read. For my plan is to deal. Now Novakov has a plan. That means he has been commissioned a job as a teacher, as a professor, I guess. Has he been invited by a college as a guest speaker? So that he has a plan for the college. For my plan is to deal how? Lovingly. See the word. Pay attention to the word. He's discussing writers, authors, how? Lovingly. In loving and lingering detail. How will he discuss these authors? Not only detail, lingering detail. Look, good readers. Now you know what is a good reader. Who is a good reader? A good reader is one who has a plan of reading. A good reader is one who reads in a loving manner. A good reader is one who reads with lingering detail. Like sipping the wine. A good reader is like a connoisseur, one who knows the taste of good drink, sipping, tasting. Reading is an art with several European masterpieces. Now I understand that Novakov is going to discuss European authors, European texts, masterpieces, canonical texts. Novakov won't discuss average or below average texts. He is going to discuss major European writers and their texts. Now look how, as I read in the very opening paragraph, Novakov gives me the context and the occasion. 100 years ago, Flaubert. Now look, in the very first paragraph, second sentence, now he introduces one European masterpiece or master author. Let me check and Google to know who was Flaubert. Look how I'm using resources. Okay. Gustave Flaubert. Let me share the page. Okay, look, we are in 21st century. We have resources. I'm reading on the desktop, a laptop, connectivity of internet, and look how easily a click away, I can use a resource. Why should I depend on a teacher? Why should you depend on me? Right? I want you to be independent reader, student, and make the university a redundant place. Make the teacher a redundant place, though one can laugh listening to me, right? Even to do these things, we have to come to the university. Okay, leave that. So we have Flavored Gustav, and we can follow now. Look, we have this information in Britannica.com. If I click, I can read more about who Gustave Flaubert was. He was a French novelist. I can read here, highly influential. He has been considered the leading exponent of literary realism in his country and abroad. Right? He was born. Details are given. I won't go into that. I just give an example how we read using technology. Okay, 100 years ago, Flaubert, in a letter to his mistress, made the following remark: Come leon serat savansi ion conesat bien silmet. Let me now look. This is, I guess, French expression, or now here is a meaning given. What a scholar one might be if one knew well only some half a dozen books. Now look, my note. Now, Nabokov argues that one should read uh, uh, masterpieces, even if only few, mm, mm, to become a scholar. Done. And let me highlight. This is the argument Novakov is making in this paragraph. This is the main idea. And in my summary, I will take this point. Nothing else. Nothing else. I won't talk about Flaubert. I, I won't talk about these things because I get the point now. What is doing? He argues that one should read masterpieces, even if only few, to become a scholar. Look, his ideology. Don't read average authors. Don't read mediocre authors. Read European masterpieces like Gustave Flaubert and many more. Now, I'm really willing to read that book where he discusses these masterpieces. Now, in my summary, I'll take this note. This is how we read as preparation for response journal. Dear student, I'm really willing to teach you how to read. And I'm demonstrating it here, how we read. What I did, I highlighted, I made a note. If it was a hard copy, I could have circled, underlined, annotated. Look, I'm interacting with the text. I'm reading actively. I'm interacting while reading. I'm taking notes while reading. I'm annotating. This is what reading is. Let's move ahead. In reading, one should notice and fondle detail. Now look, let me place my comments here. Okay. How to read. Look. Notice and fondle details. Okay. Now let me go back to Google and check this word. Okay, stroke or caress lovingly or erotically. an act of fondling. Now, I'm curious about the use of the word fondle by Nabokov. I guess Nabokov was the one who wrote Lolita. I guess so. I'm not sure. Lolita. Right. I haven't read, but I heard that it's a love story, romantic story, erotic story. And here, Nabokov brings an imagery from the world of eroticism and applies it for the process of reading. Because earlier, if you remember the first paragraph, we said he used the word loving. See the word loving, lingering, detail, as if reading was an act of romance. Do you see? Nabokov is using an analogy between romance and reading. And Nabokov is discussing reading in terms of romancing. Lingering detail. You love somebody, you go gradually over the body or over the person. Look, it's really interesting. To me, as a reader, I'm drawn to it. In the first paragraph, loving lingering detail. In the second paragraph, the word fondle. Now, but the question comes, when if you are involved in erotic relationship, if you are having a love affair, if you are making love, you fondle the body of the partner. How do you fondle an essay? You fondle an essay by doing what I'm doing. Did you watch me earlier? What I'm doing here? I'm fondling this essay. When you fondle the body of your partner, you touch each part of his or her body. When you fondle an essay, you touch each and every word of the essay. The words are body parts of the essay. You caress the body, you caress the words. That's what David Rothenberg means when he says a teacher should train his students to take time with language and ideas in a text. So taking time with language and ideas means fondling the text. I love this analogy of this erotic imagery. In reading, one should notice and fondle. Look, the two words, notice the details. When you are making love to someone, your spouse, your partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, you notice every details in their body. You notice the spark in their eyes. You notice the smile on their lips. As you read, you similarly notice every word. Look how I notice the word fondle. Look how I am paying close attention to the word fondle, to the verb fondle. Here in this sentence, I'm paying attention to the two words notice and fondle. What details? And I'm saying that the word fondle brings in romantic imagery, erotic imagery, because fondling means caressing, touching the body parts while being involved in sexual act. It's a pre-preparation for sex. And Nabokov is bringing this word from the world of romance and eroticism to discuss reading process. Okay. In reading, one should notice and fondle details. So he tells how to read. Good readers. Who is a good reader? A good reader is like a good lovemaker. Just as a good hero, just as a good lover knows where to notice, how to fondle. A good reader knows where to notice, how to fondle details. You fondle, use your hand, you caress. Look, I'm caressing the words. In reading, one should notice and fondle details. There is, look, I spent more than 5 minutes on a single sentence. There is nothing wrong about the moon sign of generalization. Look, see the imagery. See the imagery. Moon sign. Google and see what is a moon sign. A moon sign. Foolish talk or ideas. Illicitly distilled or smuggled alcohol. Right. Now come back. Look, his use of words. What is a moon sign once again? A moon sign is a foolish talk or ideas. Okay. There is nothing wrong about the moon sign of generalization. So look, Nabokov argues that sometimes we make a foolish generalization about what we read. Let's read the full sentence first. There is nothing wrong about the moon sign. But you see this imagery of the moon sign of generalization when it comes after. And you see the word after has been italicized by Nabokov for extra emphasis. As good readers, we pay attention closely. This is close reading. There is nothing wrong about the moon sign of generalization when it comes after the sunny trifles of the book have been lovingly collected. God, how beautiful. Let me make a note here. Let me make a note here. The best part of reading on a digital device like this laptop screen is that you can so beautifully insert your notes right there where you want them to be placed. Look here. So there is nothing, okay, uh, imagery, very remarkable. Mm, the moon sign. And then what else? The sunny trifles. Now look, uh, to compare two ways of reading, that is uh, generalizing and uh, skimming and scanning. He uses the word moon sign for skimming, and he used the word sunny trifles for scanning. Look, he is discussing skimming and scanning in reading. But because he is an artist, a literary artist, look how sweet words he uses. This is why we say the language of literature has emotive function. In first semester literary criticism paper, you read essays by I.A. Richards about the function of literary language and the comparison between language in science and language in arts. And you remember what I. Richards said? The language in literature draws attention towards itself. This is what you see. If he had used the word skimming, it won't draw my attention. But because he brings an imagery, moon sign for skimming and sunny trifle for scanning, it stirs emotions. This is what literary language is, and this is how it functions. Okay, if one, there is nothing wrong about the moon sign of generalization when it comes after. Look, he has also used another technique to emphasize by italicizing. There is more emphasis after, not before. First scan, then skim. First read word by word, like Divakar sir is doing here. Then only summarize. After the sunny trifles of the book have been lovingly, again, see the word lovingly is coming here third time. This is the third time. Collected. Imagery. Now, what I'm doing as I interact, as I read, I'm making notes. And because I'm using digital technique. So I can insert my notes right where I want them to be placed. Imagery, the moonshine is skimming and the sunny trifles. Look, he is bringing the moon and the sun, the day and night. Good reader, good writer. The binary between reading and writing, the dualism of reading and writing. Reading and writing are opposite, like self and other, but they are connected. They try to subvert each other. They depend on one another. Though they are opposite, but they depend on one another, just as the sun and the moon are opposite and depend on one another. They can't be together. Occasionally, you have the sun and the sky, and you can also see the moon. But the moon doesn't make any sun. The moon doesn't make any moonshine if there is a sun. So, okay, let's read. If one begins with a ready-made generalization, one begins at the wrong end and travels away from the book before one has started to understand. Now, let me place my notes. Nabokov is prescriptive here. He very sternly prescribes, sternly, with a commanding voice. Look, he's warning. Hey, be careful. If you begin with a ready-made generalization, you begin in the wrong way. Please, as you read my text about how to read, do not come to me with pre imagined notions. So what is that? Do not bring any preconceived assumptions and notions to reading. But is that possible? No. Look, Nabokov's argument. Nabokov's argument is that argument what? Do not bring any bias, any preconceived assumptions, any worldviews, any theory to reading. Read with clear mind. But I question, is that possible? Can reading ever be a theoretical? Can reading ever be free of reader's bias? Can reading ever be not affected by assumptions we hold? Because we read that in reader response theory, we read that every reader brings his previous knowledge, his cultural background, socioeconomic assumptions to his reading to make meaning. But Nabokov is asking us to hold these assumptions and come to Nabokov's essay as an indifferent reader. Let me drink this water. If one begins with a ready-made generalization, one begins at the wrong end. So do not approach a text with a preconceived notion. Good reader, este wala ni. Good writer, este wala ni. No. Don't bring that este wala ni. Keep it away. How beautifully he says, right? Look his argument. Let me know the argument. Yes, I noted. Do not bring any bias, any preconceived notions, assumptions to reading. Nothing is more boring or more unfair to the author than starting to read, say, for example, Madame Bovary. I remember how once I was holding a book, an autobiography of a yogi, and a professor came there, very high scholar, very respected fellow. He said, Kyoyo. I showed the book and he scolded me. Sto parcha? Sto padne ho? Madam Bobari padhecha? I hadn't read. I said, China, sir. Then he said, literature के विद्यार्थी भएर यस्तो योगी किताब पढ्दिने हो? Madam Bobari पढ्नु पर्दैन? Now I remember here why that professor, I won't name him, he's still there, was suggesting me, because that professor believes, like Nabokov, that you become a scholar not by reading Yogi's autobiography, but by reading selective masterpieces. His argument. You may disagree. Okay. Nothing is more boring or more unfair to the author than starting to read, say, Madame Bovary, with the preconceived notion that that it is a denunciation of the bourgeois. Look, many people think that Madame Bovary, the novel by Flaubert, is a denunciation of bourgeoisie. And Nabokov says, no, you shouldn't approach the book with this preconceived idea. You're wrong. Hold out this thing and read it. Do not bring any preconceived notion to reading. As I'm reading Nabokov here, I'm not bringing any preconceived notions. Okay. We should always remember that the work of art is invariably the creation of the new world. Do you remember what George Lukács said last in first semester literary criticism paper? You read an essay by George Lukács, where George Lukács talks about how an artist creates his own world. And this is what exactly Nabokov is saying. We should always remember that the work of, look, we ought to. Nabokov seems like a preacher, like a master giving his sermon on how to read. We should always remember that the work of art is invariably the creation of a new world. So enter this new world withholding your stereotypical biased ideas about this thing. So that the first thing we should do, see the prescription, do this. First thing we should do is to study that new world as closely as possible. You read that story about Manto's, Sadat Hassan Manto's story. Open it while discussing George Lukács, right? And here we read, enter the world without any biases. And then the first thing to do is that study this world as closely as possible. Whenever you travel to a new destination, what do? The first thing, you wander with surprise. You look around. You click 100 photographs. You say, wow. You savor the pleasure of the beauty of the place. You don't criticize, you don't comment, you don't judge first. Do not judge, do not evaluate, enjoy the text. Look what I'm doing. I'm enjoying Nabokov's text. I'm savoring, I'm fondling the details. I'm reading the way Nabokov wants me to read. Fondling the details, noticing the details. So the first thing, what is the first thing? Study that new world as closely as possible. You know, study has many meanings. One study is literally reading. There is a difference between study and reading. When you read, you're technically absorbed in the process of reading. When you study, just a minute. Hello, Avanata? La. यो शकुन्तला, म यहाँ उठ्न मिलेन, तिमी तल गएर त मिसन अन गर्दैनौ पानी भनेर तल। Sorry for the disruption. I'm at home, and there are tenants, and just they called me to turn on the water pump. Okay. So study how as closely as possible. Generalization is secondary. If you remember what he said earlier, moon sign is secondary. First, go for the sunny trifles. He used the word trifles, and he means the opposite. Look the I don't know what is the figure of speech where you use one word and you mean the opposite. Is it irony? I don't know. But it's not irony. He says, collect the sunny trifles. They are not trifles. They look trifle. The details might look insignificant at first view, at first glance. But the details are like the pebbles you bring back home from the ocean. Right? Okay. So that the first thing we should do is to study the new world as closely as possible. Read the essay as closely as possible. Do not go for summaries in the shops down the department, as you told me last year. Do you remember? While I was interviewing you after examinations, you told, दिवाकर सर हामी त तल जान्छौँ, त्यहाँ नोट पाउँछ हातले लेखेको, टपरले लेखे अरे, त्यो नोट किन्छौँ अनि जाँचभन्दा 7 दिन अगाडि त्यसलाई घोक्छौँ लेख्छौँ. And I said, किन यस्तो गल्ती लेख्या त? Then he said, अब क्लासमा पढेको बुझिएन, घरमा पढ्दा नि बुझ्दैन, अनि नोट घोक्ने हो. Don't do that. You will start understanding text if you read like this. Reading develops only by reading, not by watching this video on reading. यो भिडियो हेरेर पढ्न आउँदैन. यहाँ मैले जे गरेको छु त्यो गरे भने पढ्न आउँछ. यो भिडियो हेर भनेर मैले बनाएको पनि होइन. यस्तै गर भनेर बनाएको डेमोन्स्ट्रेसन हो यो. तिमीले गर्ने छौ भनेर मैले तिमीलाई जे गर भनिरहेको छु मैले गरेर देखाइरहेको छु घरमा बसेर. 20 घण्टा भयो मैले यो क्लास तयार गरेको हिजोबाट. त 20 घण्टा नपढ, 2 घण्टा त पढ न. Okay. So that the first thing we should do is to study the new world as closely as possible. Approaching it as something brand new. Think that this place is new for you. You go to Pokhara. It's an old place. But you're going for the first time. So Pokhara is a new thing for you. Regard the text as something new, having no obvious connection with the worlds we have already know. Now look his argument. You may disagree. This is serious. This is problematic. This is problematic. Now Nabokov is behaving like a politician. He's very clever. He is dictating. Don't read like this. Don't read like this. Don't read like this. And I want to make a note on how he wants me not to read. Then I want to ask, why does Nabokov want me not to read that way? For example, he says that, please do not connect the text with the outside world. Which theory says so? Art for art's sake? Which theory says so in literary theory? Do not bring outside world to the literary world. Do not take literary world to the outside world. Enter the world. Forget the outside world. Approach the world as something new. This is very political. Nabokov wants us to read in a certain way. And why? Approaching it as something brand new, having no obvious connection with the worlds we already know. What will happen if we bring the world we know to the world we are approaching? Think about that. Let me write here. Why does Nabokov not want reader to bring outside world to the world of the art? Literature, I put a question. I have this question as I read. This is called interactive reading. This is called active reading. This is called critical reading. You go on posing questions as you read. This is reading with response, you're responding. This is reading with a dialogue with the author. Look what happened. I read Nabokov and I'm raising a question. This is what do you mean by applying critical thinking as you read? When this new world has been, now as I read Nabokov in these lines, I clearly recall Lukács last year. I forgot the essay we discussed in class, right? The essay where he discusses about how writers create their own world and how that world is sufficient. When this new world has been closely studied, then and only then let us examine its links with other worlds, other branches of knowledge. Now look, let me make my notes. I finished reading. Look, how should I read? I read, I ponder the details, I notice the details. Now I make a note. Nabokov sternly prescribes his own reading method, according to which we should avoid generalizing about a text before we have closely studied its details. Now, this is what I will take in my summary. In my summary and response journal, I will take this thing. Look what I'm doing. It's such a long paragraph, and I boiled it down in a single sentence for my summary. Look how I'm reading for. I am demonstrating you how to read to write a summary and response journal. Move ahead. Or I'll stop here because I guess this video must be more than 45 minutes. I'll break this. I'll make more episodes because you may not be here to read. But I think this video should give you good idea, fair idea about how I want you to read, how Nabokov wants you to read. And I hope that you will read the whole Nabokov text in this spirit, in this style, in this manner. Thank you so much.